Hey, welcome back for part 2 of Servant Leadership. I'm Earl Airy with Victory Leadership, and this is moving through to the next attribute that is referred to as empathy, identified as the second characteristic of the servant leadership model. And here we see that empathy is just seeking to understand the perspective of others from their point of view. That is helpful to get a deeper understanding about who they are from who they are. And it gives us some insight into how we can be more, have higher levels of empathy when interacting with other people. So here we look at furthering the development in understanding of people that are different and have various perspectives, their perceptions, I should say. And you can say their perspectives as well, because that plays into their perceptions. And perceptions have a habit of becoming reality for people. There are elements that are missing that they're looking to provide a certain level of completeness, and they may interject their perceptions to create a solution. And having an understanding that may happen lends some empathy so that you can empathize with what they're going through and have an opportunity to help clarify the situation or the communication, which extends from listening, which was our previous characteristic of the servant leadership model, and how that ties in with empathy. So we don't want to reject the person when they refuse to accept certain behaviors or performance, as that might not be the case. It may just be miscommunications or a perception that is based on an inaccuracy, and having an understanding and being able to empathize with that perspective or that position then can lend to a desire or deeper commitment to understanding that message. And that's where talking with them, having that discussion, and getting an understanding along those lines can be very helpful. So as we try to further recognize what the differences are that might be distorting that message, that is making empathy a more of a challenging endeavor, that we can see what are those things, those common points that we can connect to dive deeper into those more elusive or granular elements that can create challenges with trying to empathize with another person's position. And one of the things that empathy can do is contribute towards a peaceful environment. As we move forward to our next topic in servant leadership model, we'll look at healing, which is contributed to by having a more empathy, understanding in that environment. I just remember a quick story about two armies that went to war, and they fought down to the last person, and the one soldier says to the other, and this is during ancient times, so they're fighting with bows and arrows and swords, and one soldier says to the other, I've been fighting all day, I'm pretty tired, I'm gonna I'm going to take a rest, and you look like you're pretty tired too, so why don't we both agree to take a rest, and we'll continue this tomorrow. And they agree, and they create a camp, and just a couple of meters away from each other, and so they can't fall asleep. So they start talking to one another, and one talks about his family and his children and what's going on at home, and the other does the same, and they start talking back and forth, and they kind of get to know each other a little bit, and then they talk till morning. Sun comes up, so they put back on their armor, and they face one another as if they're about to fight this last mile of their battle. And then they put their swords away, and they turn around and they go home. And the moral of that story was that it's hard to be adversarial with somebody that you know to that level. And when we empathize with somebody and we start to know them, then they become less adversarial. And that person then hopefully will think of us as less adversarial. And in that state, that person is in a state of mind where they start to become more open, to logical, creative, and rational thought process. Where when we're in an adversarial process, that fight or flight instinct wants to think about self-preservation, and all of those areas of logical thought and creative processes and so forth take a back seat. And it's very easy to think about things from an adversarial position or from a fight or flight because they're automatic. If you touch a hot surface, you don't have to worry about jerking your hand away. For the most part, you'll just move it automatically. And if somebody is standing next to you, you might actually then accidentally bump them, in the process, because you are not sitting there thinking about, gee, this is hot, my hand is burning, let me think about the best way to move my hand away so I don't bump this person that's next to me. What's my environment like? No, it happens because it's a self-preservation reaction. And that happens in our environment when we interact with other people. So when we understand them a little bit more, then we start to break down those barriers, and we start to develop our empathy and understand them and who they are to a higher degree. And that can then lead to that more intensive, creative understanding and logical thought about the situation that has increased development in areas of creativity to come up with certain solutions to situations that we may not have otherwise have embarked upon. So that then will segue over into the healing process, and we will take a look then at how the healing process uses sympathy and then contributes to the servant leadership model as a whole. So stand by for the next part.